There's a mental model that most travel advisors have about what their website is for. And the model basically is this. The website is where people go after they've already heard about you. A referral comes in, they want to check you out, they go to the site. A past client wants to send someone your way, they share your link. The website confirms you're real, that you look professional, that there's a way to reach you, a digital business card. And that's true. The website does do that job. It should do it well. But that's one job. And most travel advisor websites are only built for that one job, which means there's an entire other function the website could be performing that most advisors have never really thought about or built for. That second function is introducing you to people who have never heard of you before, complete strangers who are searching for exactly what you do and can find you because you've set things up so they can. For those people, the site doesn't need to confirm what someone already suspects. It has to earn trust from scratch. That's a meaningfully different thing to build for, and it's what I want to talk through today. I call this the second job, the idea that a well-built website has two distinct functions, not one. The first job is confirmation. Someone already knows about you, comes to the site to verify you're worth a call, finds out how to reach you. Most advisor websites handle this adequately. The second job is introduction. Someone has never heard of you, they find you through a search result or a blog post or a directory listing, and the site has to do all the trust building from zero. Today, I want to talk about what the second job actually requires. What you need so strangers can find you in the first place. What the site has to do when they get there, and where most advisors have gaps that are costing them clients they never knew were looking. Let me give you a clear picture of the second job working the way it's supposed to. Someone is planning an Alaska cruise. They've never done a cruise before, any kind of cruise, and Alaska has been on the list for years. This is the year they're actually doing it. They don't know a travel advisor. Nobody in their circle has used one for something like this, or at least not that they know of. So they do what most people do. They start researching online. What they're running into is that the cruise line's own websites all make Alaska sound exactly the same. Breathtaking scenery, glacier viewing, wildlife watching. It's the same language everywhere, and it's not helping them understand what actually differentiates the options. They want to know which cruise line is actually better for what they're after, whether the big ships or the smaller ones make more sense, how far in advance they need to book to get the cabin they want, and none of the official marketing materials are answering those questions in any useful way. So they type something into Google, something like, which cruise line is best for Alaska, or what to know before booking an Alaska cruise. They find a blog post written by a travel advisor who specializes in Alaska and Pacific Northwest cruising. The post is specific and has actual opinions. It explains the meaningful differences between the cruise lines in plain terms, talks about what to look for in an itinerary based on what you actually want from the trip, has a clear point of view on which ships tend to work well for first-timers and which ones are better once you know what you're doing. They read the whole thing, and at the end there's a note. This advisor does Alaska regularly, has been on several of these ships, and if you'd like to talk through your specific trip, here's how to get on her schedule. They book a call. They'd never heard of her an hour earlier. A piece of content she wrote months ago introduced a complete stranger to her business and turned them into a booked consultation. That's the second job. And the thing worth noting is that the same post is probably still out there doing the same thing for the next person who searches the same question tomorrow. The distinction between the two groups of people who come to your site matters because they need completely different things from it. The first group, referrals, past clients, people who've been following you on social, has some prior context. They already have a good reason to think you might be good. The site's job for them is to confirm that instinct and make it easy to take the next step. For this group, the site can be somewhat forgiving. A vague headline, a specialty page that's a little thin, a contact form that takes a few clicks to find. A warm referral will poke around until they get what they need. A cold visitor doesn't do that. Someone who found you through a search result or a blog post has no prior reason to trust you. If the site doesn't tell them clearly and quickly what you do and who you help, they leave. If the content doesn't demonstrate that you actually know what you're talking about, they leave. They came in with no context, and they're gone in seconds if the site doesn't give them a reason to stay. Building for the second job means designing for that person, the complete stranger with no prior context, not just for the referral who's already halfway there. Before the site can do its job for cold visitors, those visitors have to be able to find you. And for most advisors, that's where the second job breaks down first. Search is the most consistent channel. When someone types a question into Google, or increasingly into an AI tool that's pulling from the web, and something on your site shows up as relevant, that's the most direct path for cold discovery. Social is another. Not your existing followers seeing your posts, but new people who encounter your content because someone shared it, or the algorithm put it in front of them, or they found it through a search within the platform. When that happens and someone clicks through to your site, that's the second job starting. Directories and listings are a third path. Travel advisor directories, host agency advisor finders, local business profiles. Someone looking for an advisor in a specific category finds you listed somewhere and clicks through. And content referrals. When you write something genuinely useful and a reader shares it with someone they know who's planning a similar trip, that's still cold discovery from your perspective, because it's someone who didn't know you before the content. What every one of these has in common is that they require you to have something findable. A blog post that answers something people search for. Content on social that reaches beyond your existing audience. A listing somewhere that includes your site. If there's nothing for a stranger to find, the second job doesn't start. The site just exists for the people who already knew to look for it. I want to say something specific about search because I think advisors sometimes treat SEO as a technical specialty that's beyond them. At the advanced level, sure, but the basics for a local service business are pretty accessible. Search matches what someone types with content that's relevant to what they typed. So to show up when someone searches for something related to travel advisory, you need content that's relevant to what they're actually searching. The mistake is going after the obvious generic terms. Travel advisor as a search term is dominated by big national brands, OTAs, major media. You're not going to outcompete them on that. Travel advisor in your city is a completely different search. The competition in a local search is other local advisors, most of whom don't have particularly strong SEO. They're not Expedia. The bar to show up locally is lower than most advisors assume, and the person searching is specifically looking for someone near them. There are two things that matter most for local search. The first is your Google business profile. The listing that shows up in Google Maps and in local results. If you haven't set it up, it's free and it takes an afternoon. Your specialty should be described clearly. Your site URL should be in there. Your contact information should be accurate. Client reviews on that profile also matter. They influence how prominently you show up, and they're one of the first things a stranger looks at when deciding whether to click on you. The second is your site mentioning your city and region in natural ways. Not forced, just present. Clear enough that when someone nearby searches for a local advisor, there's a match. And then there's the content piece. If you've written a useful, specific post about Alaska cruises and someone in your area searches for information about booking one, your post might show up. And when they realize you're a cruise specialist in their city, that's a cold visitor who just got a lot warmer. The highest leverage activity for building the second job is writing useful blog content. Not because it's glamorous, it isn't, but because it creates findability that doesn't disappear. A social post lives for a day or two before it's buried. A blog post you write today can show up in search results for years. Every post is a potential permanent entry point to your site from someone who's never heard of you. That's a fundamentally different kind of asset. The posts that pull in the most relevant traffic answer specific questions people are actually searching. Not general inspiration content, but specific, useful content that addresses something someone in active research mode is sitting with. What to expect on your first river cruise. How to choose an Alaska cruise line for someone who's never been on a ship. What you actually need to know before planning a destination wedding in Europe. Person who searches these phrases is planning something specific. They're in decision mode, not dreaming mode. That's a much higher value visitor than someone who stumbles upon a general travel roundup. The specificity is what makes the content work. A post that could have been written by any travel writer doesn't differentiate you. A post that's clearly written by someone with deep, specific knowledge of a trip type, with real opinions, with the real kind of detail that only comes from having been there and sent clients there, that's the kind of post someone reads completely and then goes looking at the rest of your site. The relationship between social and your website matters, and I think advisors often treat them as completely separate things. The social accounts are where they're active. The website is the thing they built once and don't think about much. They don't talk to each other. They should be working together. Social is where you build awareness. You're in front of people, they get a sense of who you are and what you know. The website is where you deepen that and conversion happens. In terms of client acquisition, the goal of social isn't just followers and engagement. It's getting people from social to your site where there's a path forward. That means your profile should link to your site. When you write something more substantive, a blog post, a detailed piece of content, you should be sharing it on social and pointing back. When you share a tip or a recommendation, you can point to a related post for more. The site is where the relationship gets real. Social's the introduction. Someone encounters you, gets interested, goes to the site to learn more. And the site needs to be ready when they get there, clear about what you do, demonstrating your knowledge with a visible path to reach you. If the site isn't built for that visitor, the time spent on social doesn't turn into anything. There's a layer between traffic and booked clients that's worth naming, which is the email list. A lot of cold visitors who find you aren't ready to book a call. They're researching, they're early in their planning, they might be 6 months out. If the only offer on your site is to book a consultation, some percentage of those people aren't at that point yet. And if there's nothing else, they leave. You did the work to get them there, and then they're gone. The email list catches those people. They're not ready to book a call, but they're willing to give you their email for something useful. And now they're in your world. You can stay present with them, share content, be consistent, and be there when they're eventually ready. This is what connects the lead magnet to the overall acquisition strategy. Not a standalone tactic, the mechanism that keeps a relationship going with people who found you before they were ready. The person who signs up in January because they're starting to seriously think about an Alaska cruise might be booking a call in April. If you've been in their inbox in the meantime, you're who they call. And once someone gets to your site through any of these channels, the site has a short window to give them a reason to stay. They don't know you. They're making a judgment in the first few seconds about whether this is worth their time. What they're trying to figure out, does this person know what they're talking about? And does what they do match what I'm trying to figure out? Specialty clarity is the first thing. If your homepage could belong to any travel advisor, generic headline, no clear niche, photography that doesn't say anything specific, a cold visitor has no reason to stay. If your homepage tells them immediately what you specialize in and who you typically work with, they know right away whether they're in the right place. Then depth. Once they're interested, they want to see evidence that you actually know the territory. That's what specialty pages are for. What a blog with specific content demonstrates. What an about page does when it sounds like a real person with a real background rather than a professional summary. It's not credentials on a bio. It's whether the content on your site feels like it came from someone who genuinely knows this stuff. And then conversion paths. When they're ready to take a step, the path has to be obvious, not a single contact form buried in the navigation. CTAs placed throughout the site in spots where someone who's been reading is likely to be ready. And for the people who aren't quite there yet, something to offer them so they don't just leave and never come back. When I look at advisor websites through the lens of the second job, the problem almost always comes down to one of three places. The most common is getting found at all. The site is fine, decent design, clear enough, has a contact page, but essentially nobody is finding it who didn't already know to look. No blog content, no Google business profile, no presence in any directories. The only traffic is warm traffic, people who are already going to find the site one way or another. Cold discovery isn't happening because there's nothing out there for cold visitors to find. The second gap is conversion. Traffic is coming in through social or a directory or something, but the site isn't doing anything with it. Vague messaging, unclear specialty, nothing that builds trust, one contact form at the end that nobody's filling out. The second job starts, but the site doesn't finish it. Tightening the messaging, adding depth, putting conversion paths where people actually are in the experience, that's what closes the gap. The third is follow-up. No email list, no way to stay connected to the people who weren't ready yet. Real gap, but usually the third thing to work on, after the first two are at least partially functional. Those three, in that order, is how I'd think about where to focus. Get found, convert the people who find you, catch the ones who aren't ready yet. Here's what I come back to when I think about the second job. The first job, confirmation for a referral, is finite. It's limited by how many people you know and how consistently they recommend you. You can cultivate that, but you can't expand it indefinitely. The second job doesn't have the same ceiling. It scales with how much useful content you've put out there, how findable you've made yourself, how many entry points you've created. An advisor who's been writing specific, useful content for 2 years has a website that's introducing them to strangers every day without them doing anything, without them working that day. That's not an argument against referrals. They're often your best clients. It's an argument for building something that works in parallel, and doesn't depend on who you know. I'm Justin Hinkle. If you found this useful, subscribe. New episodes come out regularly, and that's the easiest way not to miss one. This is the Travel Advisor Website Show. Stick around.